But that you grew up, your best friend growing up was gay?
Yeah.
Or he came out to you, or you knew when you were younger, or what?
We both knew, and it was unspoken. He would never admit it, and finally, and he was very jealous of my girlfriends and whatnot. And when I called him on it once, it was like devastating. Both, we kind of separated our friendship for a while, and you know, he couldn't admit it, and then we still remained friendly, although it was a big, you know, defining moment. He decided to go on his mission, and he said to himself, you know, he kind of made this promise with God, oh, God will cure me of this if I serve him and go on this mission. So he went on his mission, and you live with boys, you know, 24 hours a day, and so he, in his words, he said, I came back gayer than ever, and decided he'd come out. And then my first job out of college was Disney World, all right, and he was and by that time he was a flight attendant, because that's what you have to do.
Yes, that's one of the chosen vocations.
And he came down and officially came out to me. And I was like, Larry, you don't think I know? You know, I tried to tell you years ago that you were gay, and you know, you weren't having it. And he was flabbergasted that it was cool with me and whatever, but you know, now that he's a flight attendant, he's in New York a lot, and we're still super good friends.
Did you realize when you were younger, all these boys are gay that are in theater?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a theatrical family, and so as a result, kind of grew up constantly surrounded by a lot of gay men. As far as them, like, as far as sensing any pressure that they might have been feeling, I don't know. I mean, in the theater, usually the gay men that I associated with were out, so obviously they didn't have. It didn't seem like they had a lot of pressure on them. I mean, in Utah, it must have been tricky for them to, you know, be in that semi-oppressive culture, and you know. But really, I mean, to be a gay man in Utah, especially back, you know, 20 years ago, that was a much different ballgame than it is now, I would assume. No.
Well, he just came from, so.
Yeah, I just came from Utah, and part of the reason, I mean, I've been trying to get to New York for 8 months now. One of the big final things where I was like, I'm getting out of here, I don't care what it takes, is that someone came up to my house and carved faggot into my porch.
No way.
And like, I lived in Lehigh. Well, at first I lived in downtown Salt Lake. I mean, it was fine. Like every once in a while, you'd have like someone throw a drink at you or something, you know, down at the Gateway or. But that's almost expected. Like, I would hold my boyfriend's hand.
Was that when we were holding hands with the boyfriend?
Yeah, I'd hold my boyfriend's hand, and people would like totally scream things, and mothers would huddle their children, and like,
oh my god.
And I'm like, no, not pedophile, gay, difference.
Right.
Let's figure this out.
Right.
But so finally, I took a job that took me out to Draper, and so I needed a place closer there. So I ended up buying a house in Lehigh, and it wasn't. I was there for 3 weeks, and it was like a nice neighborhood, like very, you know, well-to-do families, 99% LDS, and you know, it's kind of like a Jewish person moving into a Nazi neighborhood in a way. You know what I mean? Like, clearly they're not going to like you or accept you, but why are you doing it? Yeah. And part of it for me was like, I want to teach them, like, not all gay people are like this stereotype or whatever. Not all gay people are out there partying until 4 o'clock in the morning doing drugs. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like the stereotype that you see everywhere else. And yeah, we'd lived there for like 4 weeks, and someone came up and we had a house party on Friday, and we looked on Monday morning, someone carved that into my porch, and I was like, I'm done, let's go. And we got here 2 weeks later.
Really?
Yeah.
So what was your attitude toward like homosexuality? Like growing up around it, how were you not affected by the rest of the church's attitude?
You know, it seems like the church almost doesn't want to discuss it. There's this kind of undercurrent between the lines of it's wrong, it's evil, you know, you hear it's a genetic defect. But I don't remember ever hearing in a church setting, you know, gay is wrong. Probably because I wasn't listening for it.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, well, I remember hearing that.
I'm here to tell you.
When you go to those priesthood meetings the night before General Conference, those meetings,
Yeah.
almost always heard it like
Yeah.
that. But you're sitting like this, like,
Are they going to say it?
what's my fate?
Are they
What's my
gonna say
fate?
it?
What are they going to say this time? And what's the new rule on that? And
Right.
how do they feel about it this year?
Yeah, I was probably listening for that. The stuff that I was doing
Anything,
wrong.
anything concerning masturbation, sex, or
Right.
homosexuality,
Right. But my
because
experience
they're all the
was
same
different. I
thing.
mean, being in the theater a lot, I had a lot more exposure to gay people than I think the general Mormon does, so it wasn't as taboo. But I think my gaydar was maybe honed better because of that, and so when I met friends in high school, that I was like, oh, you're gay but not out yet. It was no big deal, but I mean,
Does it seem weird to you? Like, why are people gay? like, it just would seem like, because the whole world is, especially there, is geared around, it's just you're straight and that's how it is. Like, I don't get how...
yes. I mean, I was fairly, it's a harsh term, but I was fairly brainwashed to it. I mean, I remember having conversations where I probably said all those ignorant things, you know.
So did we.
Yeah, of course. You just, you know, that's what you do. That's what, you know, your culture points you in that direction. And, you know, I'm sure I said very offensive things, and you learn as you go, and, you know, you figure out, oh, wow, I was taught that, and in fact, I don't actually believe that. I was told that I believed that, but...
I was telling Nick on the way here about when we were in Rochester, when your mother came to visit.
Yeah.
I love it. So, do you know the whole Mormon backstory? Like, the history of Mormonism? The general...
Everything I've learned like bits and pieces from him, but
What's so funny, because, okay, so the
I remember-
ancient history of Mormonism supposedly takes place in upstate New York. So they have all these Mormon landmark, historical
sites.
quote, landmarks.
No.
So his mom came out.
Oh, thanks, Donnie.
So his mom came out, and 3 of us were Mormon, me and Jeff and Will, and then we had one friend that was Catholic. And she would, and I love it because we were.
And y'all were gay.
We went to but it's like we weren't out yet, and Jeff was in, and he was out, and he was in, and he was out, and he was so tormented, and I was just like, I am nothing.
that transitional phase.
Oh my god. But it's so funny how we're walking around the Hill Cumorah with these 3 homos and her son, and telling about the story, and then like turning to Tom, the Catholic, and saying, now do you think this is possible, this could happen, that God could appear to Joseph Smith? And he's like, yeah, I mean, Mary's appeared to my aunt several times. I love it.
But I remember she said something.
And you know how they like, then they get that glaze over their eyes like, oh, that's not good. It's not the same thing. Because we're right.
And I think she said something like, oh, you should go to church, you'd get a kick out of it. And Tom saying, well, what would I wear?
What would I wear? I love it because then we went to, remember, it was the middle of winter. And there's this place called the Sacred Grove where God appeared to Joseph. And it's supposed to be all beautiful and like people go and they like cry, and you know, like any holy spot
holy land,
in
yeah.
the world, that they go and they have this spiritual experience. And but we were there in the dead winter. It was so cold that winter, not a leaf on the trees, and they're clearing the woods there. So there's like chainsaws, just like. So we're like freezing to death, walking through this desolate land, and the wind's blowing, and the chainsaws are just like going. It smells like smoke, and they're like, "Yeah, this is beautiful." I'm having a spiritual experience.
Oh my God.
I love that.